point of me spending the 25, 30 minutes watching this video to be funny? What the hell is that going to do for me? Like, why do I want to be funny? Well, the people that are generally funny are more valuable in the world. Piss Adaku, ADACU. Now, if you can remember piss with a triple S, Adaku, that will keep this framework at top of your mind. A unique point of view is what they call the game in improv. The more niche, granular, specific, detailed you can get, the funnier the situations become. Sometimes the funny is in the very, very minute details, the minutiae. Why is that valuable? Well, there is your list. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Today, I am going to reveal all. I'm going to show you what's behind the kimono and just get, unfortunately, uncomfortably nude. And no, we're not in for that type of segment, but I am bearing all today because I am going to show you how to be incredibly funny by the end of this video in most situations. Finally, putting a framework to something that seems so amorphous that there's no way that you can follow a systematic structure to be a funny cunt. And excuse my language, I am Australian, and that is part of our day-to-day vernacular. And for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm Australia's #1 street interviewer. My interview channel is called Mr. Sick Cunt. Why is funny important? Well, I think it's dead obvious, but let me try and spell that part out for you as well, just in case you don't know. Well, what's the point of me spending the 25, 30 minutes watching this video to be funny? What the hell is that going to do for me? Like, why do I want to be funny? Well, the people that are generally funny are more valuable in the world. Think about anyone that you come across that has a little bit of sense of humor that is outside of the banal, monotonous, boring, corporate, just jargon-based, garbage, filler conversations that you have with anyone. You meet a person and they're just generally funnier. They are someone you gravitate towards. They are someone you want to talk to more. So immediately, having a level of funniness in your repertoire already is valuable, regardless of whether you do anything else, right? Just being, funnier in those situations is valuable in general. It provides access. People that are funnier, because they're valuable, they have access to more people, network, things, events, Being funny in many situations has given me access because I've been able to develop a relationship with someone and they have given me access to something I wouldn't have if I wasn't able to develop that relationship, which was grounded in the foundation of being funny when meeting them in the first place. One of the biggest one of the biggest values of funny is rapid connection. Now, picture back to any time you've had a very boring meeting. If you're a corporate drone of this world, you've had a meeting. Picture back to a time maybe you've been at some event. You've gone to like your partner has taken you to a catch up with two other people you've never met in your life, or picture a time where you've just ended up at a place, gone for a coffee. You're just standing in line, and that person that's approached you has kind of flirted with the world. They're just a little bit joyous. Like instead of going, "Hey, what's happening? Were you just waiting in line?" No, I was just casing the situation to see how I could rob the store. Immediately, you've developed rapid connection. They have these rapid connections, and the rapid connections are those with insane value. Well, I keep going through some of the other points. Another big value of humor, adding humor to your arsenal to have as a weapon. Another important byproduct of being funny is you do get paid more. You do get paid more. Funny people get paid more. There is statistics. If people say laughter is the best medicine, it allows in a very, very serious, a world geared towards everyone having to take everything so seriously. Everything becomes such a big boulder sitting on top of your head, having the ability to laugh and make others laugh is in itself a medicine, is in itself such a valuable part of the lived experience. And first, foremost, and probably the end bookend to this whole thing is the funniest people attract more members of the opposite sex. The funniest people attract more members of the opposite sex. And if you haven't seen that take place in the world, I don't know what fucking rock you've been living under. Because if you speak to women, say what sort of guys are the most attractive? Oh, he's got to be funny, and then it goes dark, handsome, all the kind of tall, dark, handsome, whatever other criteria comes in. But the funny, having a sense of humor, it's always in the top three, four criteria. Okay, so I think that gives you enough perspective on why spending your time to be funnier or learn the art of humor or develop a sense of humor, a framework around the sense of humor, why is that valuable? Well, there is your list. All right, let's go. Let's make a start into this this framework which I have built over these many years, and I use it every single day while working what in the world just generally, but also as a street interviewer, also as a stand-up comedian, also in the corporate world where I have used cold calling to across the businesses generate over $90 million. That is not an exaggeration. That is true facts that it's been done mostly through building sales teams and cold calling. And humor is one of the biggest weapons I have in all three of those facets. And this is the framework that I try and use. And this is a framework you can use when funny seems elusive. You can now break it down into a sequence that you can follow. Okay. Okay. First and foremost on this list, before I even jump into it, the way to remember it, the acronym that I have is one of the most random acronyms, but I'm hoping because it is so random, it is easy to remember. Think of it back to the sparkling water. Think of it as urination. Piss. Pss, Adaku. Piss, Adaku. Adacu. Now, if you can remember piss with a triple S, Adaku, that will keep this framework at top of your mind. First and foremost is, and the most important, and this is probably one that you can just focus on. This is the one lever you can pull. This one thing you can look out for in every single conversation if you want to make that conversation funny is POV, point of view. And what you are trying to do, and what I try to do in conversations, is to arrive at uncovering a person's unique point of view. What we're trying to do here is uncover a person's unique point of view. And another way to look at that is, what is the person's worldview? And if that's still a little bit too esoteric and confusing for you, we are trying to uncover what is a person's unusual opinion, right? Usual opinion, not interesting. If everyone's regurgitating the same opinion, not that interesting. But an unusual opinion, typically an unusual point of view, because that is a little bit more global than you're more in the clouds than you are in the dust, in the sand, in the whatever on the ground. It is better. The more global point of view you can try and extract, the worldview on some perspective, that is essentially a platform for you to a playground for you to play on. Take it in whatever direction you want. You have got the structure of where that conversation is going to be funny, right? You've found the frame. You've entered the world of Narnia. Now you can play, because that is going to be incredibly funny, and I'll explain to you why. A unique point of view is what they call the game in improv, meaning you are trying to find that interesting thing that you can now build upon. Okay. So in this case, someone says to you, you know what, man? There should be a world without government. Okay. Somehow you arrive at that conversation. There should be a world without government. Okay? Quite a unique, unusual point of view, an unusual opinion. And regardless of where you take that, it is really hard for you to fuck that up without that becoming funny. Okay? Because now you've got to something that is quite unusual and interesting. And a lot of the times when it comes to humor, if you can arrive, I I, I got this from a Dave Chappelle quote. Dave Chappelle quote, one of the greatest comedians, Dave Chappelle, mentioned if you can't be funny, be interesting. And how do you find interesting? Interesting is interest in something that isn't common, right? That's interesting. So you found that, you've got there. You're now at a precipice of something that is unusual. Where do you take that? Well, there's a whole framework of how to take the game into different areas. Like what what parts of the swings do you go on in that playground? Where do you now walk off to next to have the most fun? What string do you pull with out of all these? There's a lot of there's a framework around that. But the main thing is you're in the playground. You're there. So arrive at the unique point of view, and the rest is hilarious. There should be a world without government. Bro, I agree. Like, imagine you could drive your car as fast as you want. No one's going to ping you. There's no demerit points. There's no there's no police. Is there police, bro? Is there police? Oh, I don't know. Is there police? Do we have police without government? Do you know what I mean? You're getting into a humorous conversation. And if you've met someone for the first time, you want to make this funny, try and arrive at that unique point of view or perspective. And I guarantee you, more often than not, that is all I am trying to achieve in my conversations with someone, because I know once I've arrived there, I have a multitude of lanes that I can walk down. And then it's about getting the best one possible. But that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is for you to try and extract that unique point of view. Oh man, I think I think every person should be an entrepreneur. Okay. Strange. But we're into something. We can get we can take this funny. We can then you can take it wherever you want. And more often than not, you will not make a wrong step. Doesn't matter. You can ask anything from there. And it's likely to be funny. Oh man, the best job is an electrician. I just think electricians are the best. Okay? Find a unique point of view, uh, opinion, worldview, and the more overarching umbrella perspective as opposed to a more granular perspective, the more funnier, because you have just more room to play with, and it is a bigger point of view. And the bigger the point of view, the funnier it is. Okay? Let's move on to number two. Number two, in the framework of how to make situations and how to make yourself seen as funny, pinpoint a person's unique skill. Okay? And the more granular you can get on the skill, the absolute funnier it becomes. What you will start to realize as I go through this framework is sometimes the funny is in the very, very minute details, the minutiae. The funny is in the specifics. The specifics are what make things hilarious. Now, I said in the first one, the point of view, you got to be in the clouds. And that's probably contrasting what I'm saying in all of the other parts of this framework. But what you realize is if you want a categorical rule, the more niche, granular, specific, detailed you can get, the funnier the situations become. So if we're talking about skill, okay? It reminds me of a very recent conversation I had was with this guy who is a guy who works for a government council putting up signs, like your no stopping, no standing, don't park here, stop, give away, all of those signs. And in that moment, I could have maneuvered and said, "Hey, let's try and leverage a very unique point of view," because of course this person has unique points of view because he's seeing the world from a very unique point of view. But I thought what's even more funny and what I find interesting, it comes down to what you find interesting. It doesn't have to be, or it can be what other people find interesting. But typically, the thing you find interesting, the thing you find funny, will be reflected by your inherent reaction to the response, that it will become funnier because you're finding it funny. Whereas if you're trying to curate what other people are going to think it's funny is because you're trying to make other people laugh, your internal reaction is not going to be as uh, as authentic to showcase the laughter and your joy and all your, vibrating at that feel. Wow, it just makes the whole situation funny. So what you find the funniest is what you should double down into, right? But in that case, I was like, oh well, let's break down this skill. So tell me, you you put up signs for a job. What does it take to make a really really good sign? Like, what does it take to go? I fucking nailed this sign. Now, what does it take for you to look back at a job you just did and go, that was a fucking work of art, bro. That was a work of art. What does it take? And it got into it, and that in itself just got into uh, a hilarious fictional discussion now, because he wasn't really talking about what it takes to make a good sign, because it's such a dumb question to ask. 'Cause, what is the answer going to be? But the fact that we're in the game, we're talking about something that it is such a minute detail of such a very unusual job of a very obvious outcome is in itself funny. What does it take to do the thing you do really well? Okay. And skill, as granular, niche, and as specific as you can get, is where the humor is. And then what you have as a bonus, or uh, another leap you can take to build on the laughter, is once you've identified the skill or the ability this person has. Okay, it's some unique ability, or something that this person does really well. But once you find that, now if you want to build it into something that's absolutely hilarious and just leverage the work you've already done, translate it to an adjacent industry, or move it into another a fictional situation. Now stick with this sign person. He has an incredible skill to make things aligned. Now, let's just brainstorm. You're very good at making things very straight. Would you be really good at being the policeman at the Mardi Gras? Right? You're trying to ensure people are not straight. Okay, we are not. That's such a ridiculous, dumbass example. But you are now translating that to an adjacent fictional situation, or a situation where that leap makes sense. You're very good at keeping things incredibly straight. Well, I don't know. Why don't you try furniture, dude? Like, have you ever thought about furniture being a career? Like, that's such an invaluable skill. What about what about like a job that requires a guillotine, right? You could just prevent them. You just find, where can you translate that to also being increasing the humor in a situation. Okay. The third part of the how to be a funny person framework is specifics. And I feel like I've kind of harped on that already. Okay. But it is its own framework, because sometimes it doesn't marry up to just skills. But what I've already given you, kind of an elongated rant on this whole thing, a very elongated spiel on the importance of this, is the specifics. Is ask for the very, 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 very minute details of things. The humor lies in the very, very minute details. For example, if someone you meet is homeless, go, hey, what? Well, I mean, don't do this. But I'm saying, if we were to be in this situation, what kind of what kind of cardboard boxes do you look for? Like, what level of thickness should they be? Like, are we looking at ribbed ones? Are they more like better for stability? Are we looking at ones that are that are easy to dispose so you can change? Like there's an ability to change. What about are we looking at like boxes that typically don't have stickers? Is it better for that? What about trolleys? What about trolleys? Like the the specifics of the thing make the thing funny, and I feel like I've said that to death, right? So you and it's not only about the objects or items. You can get to the specifics, and I think one of the funniest specifics are asking the specifics of what the person would do in a situation. Hey, if you were going to go buy drugs, how do you approach that person? Like, how are you approaching someone if you are going out to buy drugs? Do you think it's better to be like shoulders back? Do you think it's better to be a little bit hunched? Do you think you just do like the hair part? You're getting into the very, very small specifics. That is fucking hilarious. It's the funniest shit. Okay, we're on to number 4. Now, the third S in the piss is self. Self means bring it back onto yourself. And why bring it back onto yourself? Well, there's a multitude of reasons, but the primary reason to bring it back onto yourself is you can shit on yourself a lot harder than you can shit on anyone else. And sometimes comedy, you want to play it in an arena of being able to, especially in a space where you're doing it on the fly, you want to be able to be in a situation where you can push that line as much as possible without worrying about the risks, right? And where can you not worry as much about the risks? On what people say, or if someone gets offended, like comedy, you can go past the line. People do it all the time. And then, you're in hot water. So bring it upon yourself, because you can give yourself as much grief as you want and no one's really going to care. You can shit on yourself all day. People go, haha, whatever. Self-deprecating humor. One of the one of the things that everyone leans upon, because you can go as hard on yourself as possible. And then what that also allows you to do is then switch the spotlight onto the other person, because you've now built up so much goodwill that you can then target the other person and they would be okay with it. So that's one. Self. Also, there are why talk about yourself? It takes the pressure off someone else needing to carry the conversation. Similarly, what self does is it allows the other person to know more about you. And why do we want to do that? Because knowing more about you is how you build connections to now be able to leverage it for more funny. And how do you flip it upon yourself? Whatever the hell you're talking about, you put yourself in that situation. And the easiest way to put yourself in that situation is to talk about why or why not you are suited or potentially terrible at the thing in question. So if you are talking about swimming, good man, I would be so bad at being a lifeguard because I just hate getting wet. Do you think I would make a good lifeguard? Like, do you think my my structure, like, would it work? And by bringing it upon yourself, you can then take that extra step. I'm kind of more designed to be a marathon runner that disappears off into the distance. I just don't feel like these gangly things are good for the water. You can kind of always take the piss out of yourself, make a joke upon yourself that makes it okay for the other person to laugh. Onto the second page. And these are very smaller items because these are less likely to be the primary punch that you have when you're going into the boxing match of trying to make something funny. But more often than not, the other ones are going to get you the biggest bang for your buck. If you're trying to be funny, those are the ones in the piss category. Now we're up to the Adaku part. ADACU. Okay, first one is act out. Well, as the word states, but let me make it simple. An act out is acting out the situation. And what that is playing the role, is actually playing the role or playing out or mimicking that situation and simulating it. Okay? Asking someone to simulate that situation that's being communicated through words. So let's use an example. You were telling me that you were about to have this really important interview for a HR role that you are looking to apply for. What do we why do we role play it? Let's role play it. You come in as yourself, because that's what you want to practice. I'll try to be your prospective employer. Let's give it a go. Hey Mary, how are you? And there you're off and you're acting it out. And then you play out that scenario. And the reason this makes the situation humorous is now because you can pretend to be a character. And now that character lends itself to doing whatever the hell you want. If you're good with accents, if you have the ability to uh, uh, actually act in a way where you're like using your body to be a different type of character, or the fact that now you're a fly on the wall into a situation that you were in the situation talking about it, but now you're a fly on the wall into this pretend situation. That in itself is hilarious. Okay, it is funnier to see the situation play out as opposed to talking about it. Okay, so many times in an interview where I'm having a conversation about a thing, but we can't really see the thing happen, and we would love to see it take place. Well, the next best thing is to pretend like that thing is actually happening. Action. Not one of those like boom, like the little the clapper things. Action. Now, action and dynamic movement, I'm going to categorize as one. They are two distinct things, and you can look at them separately because you got the notes here. They've been on the screen the whole time, but I'm going to categorize them as one. And I'll tell you why, because essentially they're talking about the same thing. They are talking about putting movement into the situation. Okay. Taking the conversation again, like the act out is now taking a conversation, which is just words, you're talking to each other and you're moving it into, you're still using words, but now psychologically you're moving it into being in that situation. Hey, we were talking about the thing, but let's let's pretend that thing is happening. Okay. And that's one way of stepping away from the words to make it more dynamic and interesting, because that type of conversation is way funnier, way more interesting, way more memorable. Okay? You want to make these things memorable. But you can also have an action or have some movement. Make it dynamic, take them to the thing. So, I once interviewed this lady and she told me she'd lost the phone. And at that moment, I could have gone, no, sorry, let me add a little bit more context. So I met this lady. She told me she lost her phone. And I said, wow, what do you think happened? Well, I actually don't know. I was walking through a store and then I saw this lady and this lady took the phone. Oh, so you know who that lady is? Yeah, I saw her. So at that moment in that interview, I've got a couple of options really. I mean, I've got more than a couple of options, but a couple of options came to mind. Let me dive deeper into finding out what actually happened. We could go into the specifics. One of the frameworks I talked about much earlier in this conversation. I could go into the specifics of what took place. Okay? Or number 2, I could go in search for that phone. So I said, "Hey, why don't we go see if we find it?" And that is just way more funnier. Why? Because you are now obviously it's funny because it's such a dumb thing for an interviewer to do. For someone who's come in to interview you to talk about you now is going to be the Sherlock Holmes to find your phone. The likelihood of that is worse than negligible, right? But it's incredibly funny to meet a stranger and then go on actual search for the phone. So the but there is so there is the movement that that a lot of conversations allow, but we don't do the movement because I don't know, we just don't think about it. But the movement in itself takes away the pressure from the words, and now the situation in itself is incredibly memorable and funny. Someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, you know, I'm really into agriculture. I'm studying to be an agriculturalist And then you go, yeah, that's amazing. Hey, why don't we go look at some plants and you tell me what you think could be could be wrong with each of them because some of them don't look that healthy. Why don't we why don't we go to a bush and see which trees you'd like to keep? You just move the situation, and that's dynamic movement. Action is a smaller subset to that, where it's it's a facet of the movement, but it's a movement that you can make. So let me explain the difference. Now I've told you about the movement. You're taking a conversation and you're moving it somewhere. I'm always thinking of how can I move this conversation because that makes it incredibly hilarious and because I'm producing it for it to be viewed online. So a lot of people to keep their attention, you've got to have movement. So I'm weary of the fact that if someone's watching this, I want to make it interesting for them. Movement makes it interesting. What is action? Action is doing something yourself that the conversation lends itself to, which in itself is funnier than the conversation. So, for example, one of the interviews I did, I sent this person into a bar and I said, can you please go explore the bar and tell me, can you please go explore the bar and tell me what's inside? And he left his cigarette with me. And I knew in that moment, the audience knows, I know, I've never smoked a cigarette. So I don't actually know how to hold the cigarette. And again, it goes down into the specifics. But the specifics here are using an action to showcase the specifics. So I'm kind of like, do I do it like one of these? Am I doing it in two fingers? Am I holding it in my palm? Am I putting it far away because I don't want to inhale any of it? Do I like keep it behind my head? Do I like dangle it downwards so the smoke goes away? There's room for actions. There's room for small facial expression actions. So in a lot of interviews, I try and think of what is the expression here that could one unlock a greater outcome or a greater bit of information from the party I'm interviewing. But secondly, the expression could say way more than the words, like some kind of action, facial action, uh, physical action. Someone tells me, I'm in a little bit of trouble. All right, man, I'm on it. Like you don't even have to say that. You're just your stance indicates you're ready to protect them. So action is a big one, okay? And it's very easy to do because you're trying to impart an unusual response to the words, okay? Now, down to our last two. And these are what I consider get out of jail cards. When you've got fucking nothing else. You're stuck. You've tried the point of view. You've tried the skills. You've tried the specifics. You've brought it back upon yourself. You've thought about movements. You've tried to have an action. You've even gone into act out. And none of those are really working. And I get some of those situations where I'm like, I am at my fucking wit's ends as to where to go with this. So the two crowbar approaches that I have, and one of them is to go contrarian. I've exhausted all other options. I don't have much else left here. So what can I do to wake the sleeping dog of the interviewee that I'm standing in front of? I'm not getting anything. So what I do in that situation is take the very opposite point to what they are saying in that entire conversation and try and use it as a trigger to wake them up, to really extract a little bit of energy. You know, someone says, I'm a huge believer in God. I've heard God is bullshit, right? I'm not saying that that's my opinion, all right? But just taking a complete contrarian view to them, sometimes when you can't get anything, just spark something. What? What did you say? Huh? It sparks something out of them. And that's where you can now have access to all of your other frameworks. You have access to the rest of the tools in your toolkit, which were not working before. They were not getting the result. But now that you've evoked this response, they are now all back on the table. And finally, I sprinkle this throughout sometimes because I just find it hilarious, is during a conversation or at the end of some part of a conversation, just use a very jarring, adjacent, kind of within the bounds of what you're talking about, but a very random statement and typically posed as a question can make that interaction just incredibly hilarious. Okay. So, for example, I was interviewing a very well known vegan and she was making her case. And I was like, fuck me, we're going to go down the same path of the same conversation. And that's not really what I'm interested in. And I took a swing and just said, what about chickens? We're still in the conversation. She wasn't talking about chickens. This had nothing to do with chickens being the primary part of the conversation. In fact, she was talking about pigs. But a tangential statement. They said, what do you mean? Fuck chickens. Like they're one animal that is disposable. Like the rest I do care, like I care about. But like chickens, come on. The only purpose they serve is to be eaten. And and obviously I had a point of view to back that up, but like it doesn't matter if you do or not. The tangential strange statement will will bring up so much laughter that I find them the funniest, right? So I sprinkle them here and there. And it's just to have this strange question that comes out of left field. And if you look at a lot of stand-up comedy, the weird turn and to capture a quick laugh is a strange, somewhat related, but a very unexpected statement. I was talking to a government worker and he was talking about planning and how housing, and I was like, fuck, this is a conversation that is going steeply downhill. So I took a swing and I said, what about cyclists? He's like, what do you mean? What about cyclists? When you're planning, are you planning for how to get rid of them in this town planning? What do you mean get rid of them? I mean, sometimes I just want to knock them in the back of the head, don't you? So anyway, you can go wherever you want with that conversation, but it is the jarring statement that invites a lot of laughter. So that is the framework. That is what I use all the time to try and build out some of my conversations and get the best, funniest situations in person when I'm just out and about in interviews, in a corporate workplace, in my day to day interactions. This is a framework that now has become intuitive. So I know what to extract depending on what someone has said. But hopefully, it's a framework you can experiment with. Take one or two things, just try them. Point of view is one of the greatest ones. If you can just try and utilize, find the point of view when you're having a conversation with someone and you get to the unique point of view, unique worldview, strange, unusual opinion, that in itself will make you a very, very funny person if you do nothing else. I have revealed what is behind the kimono, and you have seen everything that I haven't shown anybody else. And I hope by watching this video, it has made you a funnier, more valuable, more interesting person. Take care. See you later.